Hi, and welcome to another episode of Garmology, a podcast about clothes and stuff. Now, my guest today is a repeat guest, and I actually had to go and have a look at my list and find out when you were here last time, Genevieve. And it was in July 2022. And I remember when we recorded that one, you were rather wobbly on a yoga ball, which probably reminds you even better when that was.
Yeah, I think I gave birth like a week later. Yeah, and he's now 3.5. So yeah, a lot.
So, for those who don't have the episode sort of quite in their memory, it was episode 96, July 2022. Would you like to give the listeners a brief intro of who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So thank you. I'm Genevieve, and I'm the founder of a luxury British knitwear label based in England in Hertfordshire. And I manufacture and design British knitwear and work across the UK with the most amazing manufacturers. And recently set up our first micro factory where we're training apprentices in house and continuing heritage crafts.
Now, I noticed luxury knitwear 4 years ago. Were you luxury knitwear then as well?
Uh, yes, I think so. Maybe I say it more. Maybe it was more premium then. I'm not sure. But yeah,
Gosh,
I think it's always been on the luxury end, I think.
there's interesting semantics around all these things, isn't there? Because it's
Yeah.
heritage, it's premium, it's luxury, and then you've just got the regular stuff. I mean, we don't need to get into that, but it's interesting the words we use to describe things.
Yeah, I think at the beginning I definitely used premium, like at the beginning being about 11 years ago. And I don't know, recently maybe I have led more to luxury, but I think because we do a lot of the processes we use are handcraft, and it is a real process and that kind of time and precision that I think it really connects with luxury.
Right. Now, I remember last time we spoke, you were vividly telling me about how you'd meet all these people who had been in the craft, in the industry, who were more or less out of it, and you were sort of rediscovering factories and makers that were almost non-existent. How has that been going in the 4 years since?
It's definitely been up and down. Some of them, I think I still work with four that I worked with from the beginning. There were a couple have retired, and they've had no kind of like legacy plan, I guess. And so literally the factory just closes, and you know that part of the industry just ends. And so it has been like I was quite emotional with one of them, and my husband had to keep on reminding me, like, this is why you set up your business because this is inevitably going to happen. But I can't help but get emotional because I've worked with some people for over like 10 years, and you build those relationships, and they're kind of like a family. So when that time comes, it is quite hard. But at the same time, new factories have opened or different kind of like ways of manufacturing. And then I think because I've seen kind of like the increase of retirement and the skills not being passed on, I felt it was really important that, and it was felt the right time that I set up my own micro factory and I start teaching these skills and pass them on to the next generation.
So I get the sense there are more of these traditional factories closing down than there are new ones setting up and managing to keep going.
Yeah, well, I guess in the UK, it's hard. Having a factory is hard because you've got increased costs in electricity. That like national wage is really high, and I think people's costs have kind of spiraled. I think some people have just thought, not what kind of what's the point, but they've reached an age and they just think it's not worth fighting this anymore, which is I don't know. I understand completely, but I don't know. I still feel a kind of strong fight to continue these skills.
I could see why, yes, and I do applaud it. Just one sort of quick bit before we get into the microfactory, but I hear a lot of talk about the sort of employees and the craftspeople aging out of the industry.
Mm.
But then I was talking to a friend of mine who has stuff made in some of these knitwear factories, and he says, well, the kind of the factories are also aging out because they're not seeing any real investment. So by the time everyone's sort of too old to work there, the whole factory is basically worn out as well.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that. Like one factory I work with still use floppy disks. Um,
Good
so like,
technology, proper
yeah,
stuff.
I think my kids are the only kids that have seen a floppy disk because they come to this factory quite often. Um, but yeah, so I definitely agree with that. The machines are kind of, yeah, they have some of the parts you can't buy anymore, so they have to mill it themselves, and they've got the skills and the knowledge of how to run these machines, and I couldn't pick up these machines and start working with them because it's those intricacies that um and those kind of like nuances that you only learn over like decades of working on them. And I think also a lot of factories have started using more innovative machinery like seamless whole garment knitting and knitwear, which takes away the need for the hand processes. So they need less people on the
Mm.
factory floor. So I think that's also happening, like with the factories that are thriving and are doing really well. They have kind of changed the technology that they use.
And I guess moving to 3D knitting machines does mean a lot of investment.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
Right. And then you
um,
need to learn all the programming and all the bits and bobs, and it becomes more of a technology craft, I guess.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I mean, I guess that comes with there is a kind of balance with that. Like I feel like a lot more universities are teaching that programming and that technology, and there's a lot more grants for young technicians. So I guess yeah, I guess that kind of part of the industry is kind of growing slowly. But yeah.
It's weird because I find myself sort of observing myself talking about how, oh, the new technology must be so complicated and expensive and all that. But really, that is the future. We're not supposed to be sort of harking back and sort of keeping our 150-year-old machines going because just because they're old. I mean, if we can
Yeah,
actually do it in a much better way now, uh,
yeah. I
we're
think
not
yeah.
all driving around in ancient cars from 1910 because they were best then.
Yeah, I guess some things I find the quality or the longevity of a garment sometimes isn't quite there. And then maybe that's because the technology still has a bit more to develop. Like whole garment technology has changed so much in 10 years. Like 10 years ago when you looked at it, everything had this kind of like little pointy shoulder, and now, the fit is
Yeah.
beautiful. But but I still think that you miss that kind of longevity that like hand linked products have, like especially the neckline. Um, I mean, yeah, I definitely noticed the difference.
Yeah. Is it possible with these 3D knitting machines to have a garment sort of if you scan your body and then have a sweater knitted just sort of perfect for you? I mean, how far away from that, or is that feasible?
It probably exists, probably like the kind of like the CADing side of it. Like I first started learning that probably about 15 years ago at Hugo Boss, and you could literally scan the yarn, and
Yeah.
it would give you this 3D image of what the garment would look like with the measurements. Like it was pretty impressive, and it stopped the need of prototypes, and that was 15 years ago. So I probably would imagine there's a lot of quite impressive software.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, was it 5 to 8 years ago? There was this Asian company that started up with these dot suits where you used your phone to scan yourself wearing this suit with coded dots on it.
Okay.
And within almost seconds, you had your measurements and everything. You could sort of order clothes based on your measurements from them.
Oh, that's
There's
cool.
some incredibly unflattering photos of me wearing one of these suits somewhere on the internet. Don't go googling. But I mean, it was quite a brilliant idea because you did it at home and you just did a little twirl in front of your camera. But connect that to 3D knitting, and you might sort of be underway with some tweaking,
Yeah,
I guess. But I don't.
yeah, definitely.
Okay, let's hear about micro factory mill.
Yeah, yeah. I'm calling it a micro factory. Those, I feel like it's going to be ever growing very soon.
What is a micro factory when it's at home?
So I have set up a small factory at the studio. So I moved, well, when we last spoke, I was my my work was in every room of the house. Like the packing, everything was done there. And 2 years ago, I moved into a smaller studio where I could, yeah, have my old knitting machines and my linkers. And um, I've had about 8 years of planning to one day own my own knitting machine
Mm.
where we could do fully fashion knitting. And the moment kind of arrived where the studio space was right and I could find um yeah, find the right machine. And so a year ago I kind of launched our micro factory, which is I have a kind of a beast of a knitting machine and three linkers, and we do, well, it was 30% of our production last year, but now it's kind of grown to 40% of our production in
Wow.
house now. Yeah, so it's been really.
I won't ask you for numbers, but that does sound like that one machine is working pretty hard.
Yeah, I'm still, I don't think it's at capacity yet, but it's,
Wow.
I started with accessories. I wanted, like, the first year, I obviously had to learn how to like maintain it, how to run it, how to program it. And I just thought I'm going to keep with accessories. So I started with like scarves. The first scarf I did was a triangle scarf, which took me about 2 weeks to learn how to program it and run it on the machine because I decided to do a stitch that had like three different textures in it. So they all needed different tensions, and you went from the widest part to the narrowest part, and you had to keep the machine happy and the yarn happy and everything. And it was something quite simple. It was very technical, but I learned fast, failed fast. But then now I have, yeah, my beautiful triangle scarf, which is a good seller. And then after kind of the scarf, they went on to doing gloves, which I loved. Just the kind of technicality and seeing the machine dancing when it's knitting the fingers. So yeah, and then after about 9 months, we then moved to jumpers and cardigans. So it's kind of slowly, I've given it time and asked kind of space to learn it and get it right.
I see a sort of glimmer in your eyes when you're describing the nerdy bits of tensions and programmings and stuff. It sounds like fun.
Yeah, it is. I think as a designer, it's like often when you manufacture with a factory, you draw a tech pack, you send it off, a month, 2 months later, you get some swatches or part of a garment, and then it's kind of that to and fro. And so the creative aspect is kind of a stop and start, and it can go on for a year, if not longer. Whereas now I can design and make on the machine, I can try stuff out, and if something's unexpected, you can roll, like, you can roll with it, and it's a really fun and creative way to work. So yeah, but yeah, I love it. A day knitting here is like my favorite day.
I'm sort of also guessing that you are the one who sets the boundaries of what can be made then, whereas if you're working with the factory, it's a case of, well, that's how we do things.
Yeah, and for many years I wanted to do this kind of textural relief stitch. So it was like a jacquard, two-color jacquard with this kind of textural stitch. And every factory said no, but they wouldn't tell me why it was a hard no. So I kind of just thought, okay, fine. So that was one of the other kind of first designs that I did was knitting that, and it worked really well. But what I realized when you get to the end of a scarf and if something happens, like the yarn breaks and it all falls off, you can't back wind it. So that kind of material is then no longer, of use. So that's when I realized, that's what they were talking about. But I found other
So
uses for those ones. We turn them into bags and things like that. So there's no wastage. But yeah, so sometimes I've kind of realized down the line why there's those kind of like hard nose.
so they were really just worried about producing stuff that wouldn't they couldn't
Yeah,
charge you for.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Strange why they couldn't just be honest about it and
yeah,
maybe they were
exactly.
just trying to be mysterious.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of factories also choose a couple of yarns, and they don't stray away from that. And I think that's kind of what I started doing at the beginning with this machine. I just stuck with a certain yarn, so the variables are less kind of different. But now I'm now I'm confident with the machine. I'm introducing more, so it's nice to be able to work with different yarns and compositions.
I sort of recognise that idea about working or doing basically the same thing because I think British knitwear this winter has had a bit of a moment, especially say Fair Isle sweaters in lamb's wool, where you have a certain selection of factories who are basically just doing the same thing for a whole lot of clients as private labels and the name, but really it's an identical thing. But everyone's sort of saying that, oh, that's made especially for us, so distinctive, so special, and it's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No, it's
it must be fun to be able to actually innovate and yeah, I'm getting quite excited about this, and I know virtually nothing about knitting machines.
oh yeah, no, it's I think also I really love creating my own yarns and twisting different colors and textures. And often, yeah, some factories say we're not interested in that because you have leftover yarn and they don't always charge for that. And so now like being able to completely kind of go wild with the yarns we make and make it here is really exciting. And there are always kind of like small cones of yarn. Like my desk has kind of got a few here, but because you've got the machine, you can then think of like creative ways of like how we can use those kind of small ends. We make lavender bags and different things like that. So it's nice to kind of have that kind of full responsibility of the whole kind of production as well.
Mm. So, when you decided to set up the microfactory, was that sort of because you've been making a lot of money selling knitwear, or did you get lots of government grants, or how did this sort of come about?
Yeah, I was finding it quite challenging. A lot of the factories had moved their minimums up, so it was kind of
Ah,
needing to get about 150 units per production, which is a lot. And when it's quite a seasonal business, that's a huge chunk of money you have to find
yeah.
at kind of like the same time of year. So I've always wanted a machine, but as I said, the situation has then been quite right, and I just got to the point where I was able to get a high purchase loan that was kind of affordable, and the machine was secondhand, so that again made it affordable. But there isn't any government grants where I live. We're in a county that yeah doesn't kind of dish out any grants whatsoever. So it was I think that's why it took me so long to kind of get to this point because I actually had to get to the point where I could afford the high purchase.
Mm. Sounds like it's going to be a good investment, though.
Yeah, I think so. Like it's I guess it sustainably it's brilliant because like we've just launched a new kind of like spring summer collection, which a lot of it is made on pre-order. So it's really great to be able to react to what the customer wants, like knitting the colours that they want, the sizes that they want. So sustainably it's brilliant because you've got that kind of less wastage or kind of like units left over and the sizes that aren't selling as well. But and also yes, stock wise, you're not sitting on 150 of every style. So it
Gotcha.
makes it a bit more um, agile and kind of like can test new designs, see how it goes, and then grow it if it does well. If not, kind of that's fine. It can move on.
With your own machine, is it possible? I mean, is it feasible even that you might actually not produce anything for stock, that you can just sort of keep up with orders just by feeding your machine and
Yeah, at the moment that's what we're doing with the spring collection. Like I would love to kind of have at least a size set here because the studio is kind of somewhere where customers like to come and visit and try things on. So I do kind of want to make sure that there is a size set here
just hang on
at
a
all
minute,
times.
we're almost finished.
Yeah. Um, but at the moment, we haven't quite been able to kind of keep up with that yet.
But now that you've got the machine, is it just you? I was about to say twiddling the buttons, but that's not really what you do. But do you? I mean, have you employed staff to keep it going, or
Yeah, so I've hired my first apprentice, which has been really exciting. It took me quite a while to find someone, the right person. I think often knitwear and knitting, and I think all kind of types of manufacturing and making, it's about the feel, and you have to, I don't know, it's the kind of the right person, the person that has that kind of interest in something quite
mm,
repetitive, um, but rhythmic at the same time. And I don't know, and so yeah, really lucky to have met Poppy, um, and she has no background in knitwear.
Okay.
She crochets at home in the evenings, but yeah, she just had the feel for it, which is brilliant. So I went kind of away from the traditional apprenticeship because she would have had to have gone to college, and there's nowhere around here that has the kind of the courses that would suit what she was learning, and I'd have to have sent her to Yorkshire to do some of the training, which is quite far from where we are. So I did find a grant for that. I found a grant so she could do an intensive course in London, and within 3 months, she's kind of ready for production, which is brilliant. So she's helping me a lot with that. But already I feel like it's time. I need to hire more as
Ooh.
well.
Yeah. And I mean, in those 3 months, she's picked up the intricacies of programming and operating in.
At the moment, she's mainly concentrating on the linking,
Right.
and then we're going to look at the machine. So at the moment, it's me running the machine, and I do have some help with some of the programming, like doing the kind of size sets and things like that, just because it's a lot, like a lot to have with everything going on. But and then I've got Amy who helps me with the packing thing. She's fantastic at sewing, so she does a lot of the kind of the hand finishing as well.
It's a proper little sort of cottage industry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Although
It's
you're kind of in a sort of heritage craft site, I believe.
yes, yes. I'm in this beautiful kind of part of Hertfordshire, and it's called Grandy's Place, and it's a heritage craft site. So my neighbour is a globe maker.
Globe
Um,
maker.
yeah, it's which is yeah,
How
his
brilliant
work
is that?
is beautiful. Yeah, so he restores globes, and he also designs his own ones as well. And then
Wow.
um, the other side is a stained glass window um, maker. So he's just redone all the windows in the Tower of London. There's a 17th century watchmaker who does a lot of stuff for the King and Queen. There's a milliner, ceramics. So it's an amazing kind of like hub
Ah,
of creativity, and everyone's quite young as well, which is really like refreshing to see kind of
mm.
yeah younger people in those kind of quite niche industries. Um, and yeah, so we do monthly tours where people can come around and see kind of the behind the scenes. And we do twice a year, we do kind of big open days. And we have lots of schools visit to kind of see how things are made. And so they might do a school visit in the morning, and the afternoon it's quite hands-on doing workshops with some of the makers as well. So yeah, it's a fantastic site.
It sounds brilliant. I'm just sitting here thinking, wow, you can imagine being a globe maker in 2026. It's like, wow. Then I guess you only
Yeah,
need one guy who's interested in it, and then there you go.
yeah. And some of the like some of the restoring he's done is quite amazing. Like it's kind of like chemistry, because he has to work out what is in the paints that were used in like
Uh,
17th century, or he might be asked to change like the geography, like where the borders are and stuff like that of a country. So it's yeah, it is fascinating. Yeah, you
yeah.
learn a lot here.
You sort of think of things as totally obsolete, and then it turns out someone's really there. Yeah, brilliant. So how do you fit into all this? Being doing your modern knitting machines and this
With the heritage crafts,
with the
I
heritage
definitely
craft.
I definitely blur the lines slightly.
You could lay out some
um,
floppy disks.
yeah. Well, I I see what we do is we, we help enable kind of some of the heritage crafts, like the linking, and hand intarsia is one that is a technique that I would like to have an apprentice and teach, which is the traditional kind of argyle jumpers or the golf
Right. Yeah.
jumpers where it's all inlaid by hand, which obviously takes hours to make. One of my first collections was kind of mainly hand intarsia, and one of the front pieces would take about 14 hours to knit. So
Wow.
it's something, yeah, it's an incredible technique. But when I first started my brand, there was 8 knitters that I knew of, and now I only know one person that's still doing it. So it's definitely like a dying craft. I'm trying to get it on the red list at the moment of endangered crafts. So that would be fantastic to be able to do here, but then we would use the modern machine to be able to do the knit the back panel, the trims, and kind of be able to offer kind of more kind of commercially viable products rather than something that's completely made by hand, which would cost thousands.
If it takes
Um,
14 hours to make, I mean, how do you even price something like that?
it's a I mean the yarns that you use are cashmere, like it's mainly a cashmere product, so it is a kind of a very kind of beautiful. It's a beautiful technique, and it's
Yeah.
um yeah, it's I mean some of the designs like the kind of I did quite a lot of like quite bold geometrics, which took a lot less time than some of the
Oh,
incredible like golf pictures or like deers in the countryside, which I can't even imagine how long they took.
all right. Because this is kind of like embroidering pictures, sort of that type of way of
Yeah, so you
working.
follow a kind of paint by number. It's like a chart, and each
Yeah.
like one square is one stitch, and yeah, you have to lay the yarn onto the knitting needles and kind of cross over the next color. It's when yeah, we used to video one of the knitters, David, knitting, and he was so fast at it that it looked like we were speeding up the video.
Oh,
I think they you get into kind of rhythm, and it's yeah, it's even though it takes 14 hours, they're very quick, constantly moving.
but they must be super concentrated as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Sort of after
yeah.
12 hours, you make this incredible mistake and don't notice it. And
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, I think it takes about 2 years to train into that technique. It's quite a long time of training. And I've spoken to some of the like very well known like Scottish companies about, you know, would they train anyone? And they have they have the hub and knowledge of who used to, do it for them. So I'm kind of quite leaning to them to try and find a master that could teach, so it doesn't completely disappear.
yes, it's strange because it's not one of those sort of crafts that you think of unless you're really involved in the business, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think with what I've learned with the kind of endangered crafts is that knitwear is seen often as like a hobby and not kind of
Mm.
commercial product. So that's why a lot of kind of skills aren't kind of are kind of forgotten and go because yeah, it's seen as that kind of a hobby rather than a job,
Not like forging
an industry.
or doing something
Yeah,
really cool.
yeah.
Right. Now, you did mention that you design your own yarns. I have noticed increasingly, really, of late, that a lot of sort of premium luxury brands are mixing more and more synthetics into it. What is going on there?
Um, well, I guess I mean the yarns that I create are all using kind of natural fibers. So I take different like lamb's wool, so big chunky slub with kind of finer lamb's wool, or I mix alpaca with merino. So the kind of yarns that I twist and make are kind of natural fibers. But I guess with synthetics, it's quite I guess you're kind of quite often led by what's available at, like what the yarn mills offer, I guess.
Mm.
But there's a lot of, I think there's some of the marketing is very questionable with some brands where they say it's a wool blend and there's 5% wool.
Yeah, or a
Yeah,
cashmere
but
blend with just a little bit.
yeah, yeah. I think there should definitely be some laws of like how people can describe something as wool blend when there's barely a trace of it. Um, but yeah, it's something quite frustrating because often, again, it's one of the things I get when people come on tour. They're saying, you know, is this wool? Is it, or is it kind of like something you'd see in Marks and Spencers, but that 5-10%? And so I think that's what's really nice about having this space is that you can show this is yarn spun in Yorkshire in Scotland. This is the difference, and it's quite nice to be able to kind of
Yeah, because it seems like there's more and more synthetics being creatively used now, but at the same time, people are actually more concerned about what goes into them. So it seems like while people are growing more concerned, the makers are putting more in, and it's just hang on, that's the wrong way.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely noticed it. Maybe it's kind of what I see on like Instagram now, but I'm definitely seeing more of that with like activewear. like people now kind of questioning what chemicals are actually in their activewear.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it's I mean it's great that people are becoming more aware about what chemicals are used in their fabrics and how things are made. I think that is fantastic. I work with a really incredible yarn mill in Italy. So most of the yarns I work with are UK spun, but a small proportion is spun in Italy. And it's this beautiful, naturally dyed merino wool. What came here actually, and it took them 20 years to come up with the colours of this yarn, and they only use plants, no chemicals
Wow.
whatsoever, and they can create these like incredible vibrant pinks and limes, and the colors are extraordinary. And what um what I found really fascinating is that the mill owner's daughter has been developing these for 20 years, and she's a chemist. That's her
Right.
background, and you can really see the difference that someone's going towards this, like doing something for good, not for fashion.
Yeah.
And every batch has to look exactly the same, like every year. But obviously, Mother Nature doesn't work that way. If there's
No.
a drought or a wet season, or politically, if they can't get, there's something going on, they can't import certain herbs or something like that. They have to change the batch. It's like a massive tea infusion, and so in one batch they might have to use more onion skins or a different type of
Yeah.
bark, and it's absolutely fantastic. And now I think 70% of the ingredients they use are vertically farmed. They farm it themselves, or they forage for it locally in Italy. And it is amazing. It's just yeah,
It's totally remarkable. If you'd asked me what the odds were of that being a naturally dyed fibre, I would have said no
yeah,
way, because
yeah,
natural dyes tend to be a bit washed out, or I mean, it's not that often you get something that's really bold and striking.
yeah. No, there's a
Incredible.
red as well. I haven't got it here, but the difference between like the bright red and this pink is it's all dyed from madder root, and the difference is the acidity in the soil, which
Right.
gives that kind of different vibrancy. It is absolutely incredible. So, um, yeah, I feel like there are some amazing people doing amazing things out
Yeah.
there.
Because that is, I mean, there's a lot of talk now that there seems to be a sort of uprising, a sort of influence uprising against natural fibres, which clearly seems to be initiated from the synthetics industry, where they're going after, say, wool, how bad wool really is because of so and so, the scouring and the dyeing and all this. And I mean, that is kind of a problem for a lot of natural fibres if we're doing a bit of both sidism, that most wool is dyed using synthetic dyes.
Yeah,
But I mean, there are many reasons for that, not least cost and consistency.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. I think that consistency is is definitely yeah, something that I've never really seen. And I have had lots of customers message me saying, if I buy the jumper and the scarf, are they going to look the same? Does it look like the same pink or the same blue? And it's like, no, this is completely consistent from
yeah.
batch to batch.
I
It's
recall about
amazing.
many years ago when I visited Harris Tweed Mill, and I was kind of disappointed to learn that they used synthetic dyes. And I guess because there wasn't much question about it, but and that's how they've always done it. But
Yeah,
I mean, do natural dyes cost a lot more? It must do.
it's expensive yarn.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. It doesn't help also with like the cost of like importing it now from Europe. But it is a more expensive yarn. But but I just love the fact that it's done right from the beginning, and it's done for the environment and not for fashion, which I don't know. It's yeah, yeah, it's a fantastic meal.
I mean, it's very interesting what you say there because it's sort of worth doing it because it's the right thing to do. And I'm guessing your customers also feel the same about it, or,
Yeah, yeah,
or
definitely.
enough of them do.
Yeah, I think it had to have. I couldn't just say it's naturally dyed because that is kind of meaningless. But
Yeah.
when I kind of show the different colours, and then the kind of the dried leaves of the hawthorn, or um and then that you kind of get that context, which I guess is it's what's great about social media is that you can do that storytelling and you can show it so much more stronger than just putting on a label. It's naturally dyed.
You could just write it's sustainable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's kind of meaningless.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's and I don't know. I think also yeah, now people are kind of more aware about what's on their skin. I think that that's it's a really important conversation.
Mm, yes. I expect you've seen the plastic detox program on Netflix now.
I haven't, no.
Oh, you'll want to watch that. Everyone should watch that. It's very, very
Yeah,
good. Very good. And that plays right into what you put on your skin and plastic clothes and microplastics and all this, and which makes me wonder what would be. I mean, for me, peak natural fiber, natural dye, wool things. I mean, it's a slippery slope once you get into these things because there's always
yeah,
something just that little bit more natural around the corner. It's
yeah.
just that bit nicer. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess well, it makes you kind of look at kind of everything in your house then, doesn't it? That
It,
a lot of things need changing.
it does. It does. It really does. Um, it's just, I mean, plastic everywhere. We just can't avoid it.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. It's yeah, it's a I don't know. It's I guess kind of the more aware of it you are is when you can start making those kind of small changes, isn't it? And kind of slowly get out all the all the plastic.
Now, as a brand that's been going, what, 11 years now,
Yes, yeah.
are you mainly internet based or? I do remember some years ago I found your things in a shop, a little village somewhere on our travels in Britain.
The Cotswold,
It might
would it
have
have
been
been?
in the Cotswolds, and I found they had your socks and things, and I thought,
Oh.
whoa, that's how cool was that?
Oh, yes, I used to be stocked at the time the hotel in the Cotswolds. So it might have been that one. Beautiful hotel there. Um, and then I have been stocked in like Fortnum and Mason as well in the menswear section. But yeah, I'm mainly D2C as a kind of like British made product. It was quite hard to do wholesaling,
Yeah.
um, just because yeah the margins weren't there. But now we're making in house. It's something that we're kind of bringing back, and we can do more of like with more kind of like exclusive colorways and kind of doing a collection for that shop, which has been quite exciting. But yeah, that's kind of like all building up for this winter. But yeah, mainly we're D2C, and we sell kind of globally. US used to be 40% of our market up until last year, which
Mm.
has unfortunately declined slightly. But we've been growing organically in Australia, which has been really exciting because as a seasonal brand, it's we kind of chase the
Ah,
winters
that kind of gives you
around the
two
globe.
two winters, doesn't it? Yes.
Yeah,
Clever.
yeah. It's been a really interesting kind of market. Like I've never been to Australia, so I kind of don't really know it. But when I kind of speak to some customers, I've never realised how cold it can actually get in
Oh,
some areas. Um,
I mean, it is huge, so it
yeah,
wouldn't surprise me.
yeah. And they have a real kind of love for British made knitwear, but sustainable knitwear. And from conversations I've had it, they kind of find it quite hard to find kind of responsibly made knitwear. So the kind of, even though it's being shipped from one side of the world to the other,
Yeah.
they're kind of like, if they can wear it for 10, 20 years, it kind of, that's, so much better than what they were kind of getting from China or somewhere like that.
Now, if someone's going to wear, say, a sweater for 20 years, would that be a fashion sweater or would that be something that's designed to be deliberately not according to a fashion so that you're never sort of in fashion or out of fashion, but it's just,
Yeah, I
if
guess
that
it's
makes
kind
sense.
of something that suits you, I guess. Like I feel like some fashions really suit certain people, and some, timeless pieces, I think, yeah, will kind of always work. But I saw someone the other day that had one of my first hand intarsia jumpers that she bought for me 10 years ago, and she was still wearing it, and it looked like as it was when she first bought it, and
Mm.
it's this bright kind of geometric, and it just really suited her, and it just kind of it felt like a part of her, if that makes sense.
Mm.
And I feel like that, like colors may go in and out of fashion, but it kind of doesn't matter because it works with her and her wardrobe. And I don't know, I feel like yeah, if it suits you and it feels comfortable, I think it will never kind of go out of style, I guess.
It's an interesting conversation I've been having with a few people lately. The sort of the idea of timeless garments or timeless fashion, or and it gets always a bit complicated. But I can tell when say if I'm in a shop and I'll see something, I think, well, that's destined for the sales racks because it's so obviously of this fashion from last month, probably. But you can just tell
Yeah,
that that's not going to last at all.
yeah, no, definitely. I think maybe with kind of like maybe more woven. No, I guess it's with knitwear as well. I think I always kind of design pieces that you will kind of wear and will fit into your life. I think that's something that I find really important with clothing. Like I bought a tweed suit when I was 15. It was like a jacket and skirt, and I still wear it now. Like it's just something that I bought and I loved, and it was from the
Yeah.
1950s when I bought it. Like,
Ah.
and it's I don't know, it's just a piece, and it's got that kind of real 1950s style, but it's something that I feel really comfortable in, and it just
Mm.
kind of every year it's back out again, and I don't think anyone's ever said, "Oh, you're wearing that jacket again." It's kind of like, oh, it's
That
I don't
old
know,
thing.
that old thing. I love it so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess it's kind of some things just become a part of you, and I love it when um my customers their daughters, are wearing their jumper or something like that, and it's nice that it has those kind of different generations wear it as well.
Yeah. I do wonder if it helps whether the garments are actually sort of kind of boring, not over designed, but they're sort of subtle and you don't really notice them that much, and that makes them more timeless because
Yeah.
they're not sort of screaming for attention.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, if you're, yeah, maybe like an 80s knitwear piece, you would kind of like that would slightly
Yeah,
date a bit more than
huge
with all the
shoulders and
patterns.
brash
Yeah,
colours, and yeah.
yeah, yeah. Though my nan used to knit a lot of those, and my sister does still wear some of them now. But
Ironically or fashionably,
but they kind of, yeah, I don't know. They're comfy. They kind of
personality.
just wear her. Yeah.
I mean, you do have a lot of knitwear sort of staples like the Norwegian fishing jumper with the little fleas, is it? The little dots on it.
Yes, yeah.
Sort of
The
Aran
raker stitch.
sweaters and all this. But and the weird thing is that I mean, these are also marketed as fashion because suddenly, oh, it's the retro Norwegian fishing sweaters are back this season again. It's like, yeah, they've been around for
Yeah,
100
exactly.
years.
Yeah, yeah. I I guess it's the same with like Pharaoh last year. It'd like make a comeback, but it's always been
Yeah,
around. It's always been
this
timeless.
season we've rediscovered the feral patterns. Yes, but then again, I mean, that's another one that if you have a nice one, you will wear it for a very, very long time.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah,
So,
and yeah, and the Gansey sweaters as well. Like, yeah.
so really, I mean, your designs, where do you pick up them from?
What kind of inspires me?
Yeah.
Um, I guess I always start with. I think I start with the yarn and the colours. I'm really inspired by kind of the colours I see in like Mother Nature, and that's when I kind of like start playing with the colours that I twist, the yarns that I twist. And then I'd probably say that my silhouettes are kind of more, I guess they are kind of more simple in a way, kind of like boxier fits or slightly oversized or cropped. So they're kind of very wearable pieces that you could wear kind of day to night. And through the kind of seasons, I kind of design there's a real kind of interest in the detail and the colour.
Now, I did have a bit of a moment the other evening when my wife suddenly forwarded me one of your Instagram posts. She was completely unaware that I actually knew you and that you'd been on the podcast before. And the post she forwarded was you showing some buttons by Courtney and Co., which she
Yeah.
was also unaware of being on the podcast before. So,
Oh,
which made me wonder, I mean, how small is the world? And do you work with, I mean, who do you know and how do you find people and what is going on?
how did I meet Courtney and Co? They contacted me. Oh gosh, a really long time ago, probably like 7 years ago. And David called me and was like, "Can I take you for coffee? I want to talk to you about buttons." And I was like, "This is
Ah.
sounds like an unusual conversation," but I was like, "I'll come and meet you." And I had yeah, coffee with him, and he told me about this factory that he'd bought and the history behind it, and I just fell in love with it instantly. And I was like, I just have to work with you. And they're the most amazing couple. They create the most beautiful buttons, and there really is something so special with the buttons that they make. Like everything, again, it's like everything is done right. Like the machinery they use, the natural materials they use, and I can really play with the colours of the buttons. And I give them, yeah, really beautiful kind of like swatches. And I'll say, like, I want it a little bit of lilac, a little bit of grey, and can really go quite descriptive. And
Yeah.
they just run with it. And yeah, so it's a really beautiful kind of collaboration. And it makes the piece, like it makes it, it really brings it together and finishes it. So it's, yeah, they're a factory, well, a company that I love working with.
It's fantastic that they've managed to make it work because buying a kind of rundown button factory and not knowing yourself how to make buttons wasn't an optimal starting point. But I mean, it just goes to show that you can actually manage quite incredible
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, and I think they've had the kind of similar challenges of that there's no government funding where they are as well. So it's, it's hard when you have to like invest in those machines and you have to find people and train them, and they have an apprentice as well. So it's yeah, they're really inspiring to kind of to kind of see how they can take, I guess, yeah, containers of machines not knowing what to do to this incredible business where yeah, they make the best buttons. And I mean you see the buttons a lot on kind of, yeah, a lot of like independent British brands.
Yeah,
um yeah.
they have managed to chisel themselves into a nice little niche where I think they're probably the only button makers in the country still.
Yeah.
But with the
Yeah.
good story and being nice people and good products, they have been adopted by pretty much everyone seems to use them. Everyone
Yeah.
who says where their buttons are from uses them.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
I think because it's worth mentioning because it's a good story, I guess.
Yeah.
So
And also it helps support them and helps, I don't know, get their story out as well. um
I often think that small makers, small brands have a lot more to gain by working together than trying to compete with each other because there's so limited production and there are quite a few customers out there, but you're not all going after the same sort of people.
yes. Yeah.
So maybe
Yeah.
by working together, you can sort of reach double the amount of potential customers. And
Yeah,
but
I think it's, yeah, I think you're kind of all in the same kind of position, like, like it is challenging having a business and yeah, kind of getting your product seen. So I think it's kind of, it comes quite naturally, kind of that kind of sharing and yeah, showcasing others as well.
it's kind of like where you're situated now. I mean, you could promote globes as well, and it's not costing
Yeah.
you any sales, but it might gain him some sales, and he could promote
Yeah.
sweaters, and it would work out fine for both of you.
Yeah. No, I think that's where the kind of open days do really well because people come along thinking, right, oh, I want to go and see someone about windows, and then they realize there's this whole other world with ceramics and hats, and yeah, so it's brilliant.
And I imagine the sort of people who are into one or two of these things, sort of craft orientated people might also be interested in more craft things. I don't know if you're interested in globes, you might be interested, but I don't know. But it just strikes me that it is a genius idea to put you all together.
Yeah, yeah. There's yeah, no, there a lot of the people here are Quest scholars, so Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust. So they're
Okay.
it's a kind of it kind of supports makers and helps kind of like learn skills, pass on the skills, and kind of gives kind of grants and opportunities of maybe kind of young people that are interested in a craft that wouldn't know that they,
Yeah.
you know, wouldn't know the kind of next steps for it. Um,
I do come across people doing old crafts a lot more in the UK than I do in Norway. In Norway, we do build Viking longboats locally here.
that's
I'm
good.
not sure we do much else, and we don't build them fast enough for Lindisfarne to be in any sort of worry about them returning soon because it's only a few of them and it takes them years to build each one. Um, but it does. There does seem to be a lot more of it going on. I mean, people building steam engines, and I met this guy up in Sheffield some years ago who was forging Damascus steel using this amazing old machine. The machine was over 100 years old and still pounding away. And I was thinking,
Yeah,
wow, that is so brilliant. Imagine
yeah,
doing that.
no, yeah. It is really interesting because I guess people always talk about UK being quite a service. It is a service-based business, and it is nice that there is, yeah, a lot of young people. Well, not just young people, just a lot of people that are even just like upskilling and kind of moving into those crafts, and there's more kind of hand processes.
Doing real stuff, not just working in a call center or business to business sales or whatever, some sort
Yeah.
of rubbish. But, I mean, uh, Alan, who does the nettle dress film, I mean, he seems to have quite an industry in teaching people how to make fibers out of nettles and dye them, and it's so brilliant.
Yeah.
Granted, I imagine you couldn't have the whole country going that way, doing little crafty things in their shed, but it does give me some hope that we're not all, some of us are going the right way at least. So, but what's going to happen when the micro factory now gets, when you reach capacity? Will you be installing another machine?
Yeah, I think that, well, there's definitely room for it. There's definitely room for another machine. I think it's just at the moment it is just finding people to employ and train. I think that's the kind of that is the kind of the biggest challenge. A
Hmm.
lot of the schools around here don't teach textiles, so it's kind of it's a yeah it's quite a I don't know it's quite a challenge to find the right person. But I'm hoping by the kind of by the open studios and Instagram kind of helps with people kind of discovering you and then getting in contact if they're interested in that kind of technique. But a lot of people who have been interested live in kind of like South London, and there's just no way they would commute this way. It would take too long and be too expensive. So
Hmm.
it's yeah, training, upskilling. That's my kind of next step before we grow the machines even more.
It's interesting that, I mean, you're really only wanting, say, one or two people who they must be out there somewhere,
Oh,
but
definitely.
they're not coming through the traditional schools. I remember I was some years ago, fashion studies in Manchester, where almost everyone who studied there went into the fast fashion industry. So Boohoo and whatnot, who had their HQs in Manchester, and they were just sitting there copy pasting tech packs and ordering stuff to be made. And almost none of them were going into the more sort of craft side of things or small scale, small business.
Yeah.
So maybe what you're saying about Instagram or someone just popping by and they suddenly realize that this is what they want to do.
Yeah, I think until you see it, you don't know it exists. I guess that's a thing. And a lot of kind of when I do meet people that are, I have a lot of kind of like work experience with universities and stuff, but they're often kind of they kind of do the course thinking that they'll be a designer and not really knowing that there's other jobs within that industry. And I used to go and lecture at Nottingham Trent University about kind of all the different roles because I did kind of like every role from designing to production before I
Uh,
set up my brand. Um, and there is so much more that goes into that world, and there's just so many kind of pieces of the puzzle. So sometimes it's just that people don't realize that exists and it's a possibility. So it is just, yeah.
I guess being a fashion designer is a bit like being a top chef or a prosecutor or one of these. You think, oh, I'm going to study legal stuff, so I'll become a prosecutor, but really that's just a tiny part of all the jobs that are. So
Yeah.
in the clothes industry, being the sort of fashion designer is just, there's only very, very few.
Yeah, there's not, I guess there's, especially in knitwear, there's not that many jobs out there. And when me and my friends graduated from our knitwear course, we very quickly realized that there was only a handful of jobs in the UK. So most of us went abroad and worked for other businesses like in America and Italy and Spain. Um, so yeah, and then or some people just couldn't find a job and went into a completely different industry.
I mean, you could be stuck picking this year's colours for Fair Isle sweaters, but I guess that's not sort of why people want to become a designer. It's like the guy at Adidas who picks out the new colours for the new trainers. They seem to release new trainers every year, and it's just, oh, there's a new colour. It's just brilliant. Great job. So, I mean, you've been at this now for quite a while. I mean, 11 years with your own brand, but when did you when did you
I
graduate?
I graduated in 2011. So yeah, that's 15 years ago. Yeah.
So you actually didn't work outside that long before you went your own way.
No, I did we did a year in industry, and within that year I started freelancing then and kind of carried on, yeah, in my final year. So yeah, I didn't work for that long, but I moved kind of jobs as a kind of position when it came up. I went from kind of like designing to production, developing. So I kind of
Wow.
saw all kind of different aspects of the business.
Sounds like there was a clever plan there.
It wasn't intentional, but it just kind of happened to come. I was when I started at one job at Hugo Boss, they were like, "What are you interested in?" And I was just like, I want to learn how the yarn is made, and I want to learn how how a factory works." I was just so interested in every kind of aspect of it, and but then that kind of also then led me to then realizing that there was a British knitwear industry that was disappearing, and it was just I used to spend my holidays traveling around the Scottish borders, seeing factories and yarn mills. That was like what I did for fun. So it's
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, that's kind of always been my, yeah, a passion. And I guess that's how it led me to where I am.
Hmm. So where do you see yourself going forward now? Are there more factories to be saved, or are they all? Will they all be replaced by micro factories?
There's definitely a lot more kind of micro factories kind of popping up, but I feel like there's, the kind of the big factories that everyone knows that will continue definitely. I love working with different factories, even though we make here. Like being with those factories and being with that community and learning that, like seeing those skills, they do something very different than what we do, and so I do hope that they kind of continue and thrive. And I I I hope to kind of create a kind of a hub of knitwear here in Hertfordshire and bring on more apprentices, take on more machinery and just continue those skills as well as then bringing in the heritage knitwear with the hand intarsia and more of the linking so it becomes a kind of a marriage of both the kind of like the new and the old.
Hmm. It's interesting how that new technology can also help save old crafts. But I remember some years ago when Manchester, the Cottonopolis, and English fine cotton started up again. And I think it was all sort of high tech, super product. But then I don't know what happened. They couldn't make it work.
Yeah, their cottons are lovely. Their fabrics. I can't remember now. I don't know if it was around Brexit time they closed. I'm not quite sure.
Could have been because that did make things difficult for politics are kind of making problems for things
Yeah,
now, aren't they?
definitely. They add an extra layer of challenge that didn't need to be there.
Everything that crosses borders and yeah. So really, I suppose for a large part, you have to make it work in your own country and then take everything else as a bonus.
Yeah, I think I've definitely learned over like 11 years. I feel like I've kind of seen every kind of different things being like thrown like politically changing, like yeah, Brexit, COVID, like just so many kind of constant changes of how you have to kind of like, run a business, and I don't know, and how you sell to people. It's just constantly been changing. So I think that keeps it interesting and new. I think every year it feels like something very new.
Yeah, well, it's really all you want to do is make a good knit sweater,
You could jump out, yeah, and be
ideally.
able to sell it to someone and they love it and wear it. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find many people come by that have bought things over the years? I mean, do they come back and want another one and so forth?
Yeah, definitely. I've got, yeah, some very loyal customers who have yeah, an amazing collection of GS knitwear, and I definitely find that people will buy for a couple of years and then they kind of disappear and then they come back. I definitely find that with a lot of our kind of male customers, they come once, buy a few jumpers, and they disappear for 5 years and then they're back again. Um, so yeah, so it's definitely you see that kind of flow. But also customers really do travel to then come see us here as well, which is really nice. So even if they're not buying, they do kind of come and support, and
Yeah.
that which is really lovely.
There is a kind of paradox in the buy once, buy better, which really means buy more expensive, and then trying to make a business out of people only being a customer once, I guess, because you do also want them to come back and buy a few more.
Yeah, I once did a children's wear range years ago, and I made the jumpers so the like when they're one, it's a bit oversized and a bit cool, and
Yeah.
then when they're two, it's more fitted. And a friend was just really puzzled by this. They're like, surely you want them to come back every year, but I just hated I didn't like it didn't sit with me well that the child would grow out of it so quickly. I wanted like a couple of years wear out of it, which yeah felt important to me.
That is difficult because, I mean, as a business owner, you have to be a little bit cynical as well because it is your living. I mean, you can't only do good, or I mean, how does that work in your mind?
Um, I think it's whether it kind of fits well with you, like with the kids wear being an example. Like the jumpers were £90 each, and if someone's going to wear it, I buy that. I wanted to get more than 1 year's wear.
Yeah.
I've got kids. I know how quickly they go through clothes,
Mm.
and my kids have both actually worn that jumper. I kind of kept one as a sample to keep, and they've both worn it over kind of like a 4 year period, and it's still, I could pass it on to the next person, and that to me feels like the right thing to do, and also it's practical in a family life. Like I don't
Mm.
know, that's so, but yeah, I agree. Like then someone who then argues, well, you're not going to make as much money if they bought four different jumpers, one a year for both kids. So yeah, I know it's like one of those things, but um I guess when you're a founder, you you are more connected to the decisions that you make,
Mm.
and whereas maybe less so when you're kind of part of a chain of different departments. Or
I mean, if you were really cynical, you would make it the sweater so that it would basically just crumble after, say, a year.
yeah,
long enough time for you to really love it and adore it, and it can't imagine life without it. But then once that feeling has set in, it just sort of disintegrates, and you have to go and buy another. I do consulting, but I mean, you also have the possibility of clothes sort of moving around. I see this a lot in the sort of menswear circles I'm in, that you might have a jacket for a couple of years and then it moves on to someone else. And there's always people buying and selling stuff. And there's quite a lot of garments in circulation. But
Yeah,
I mean, I've got a shirt that I know the two previous owners of, and it's still in lovely condition, but everyone's worn it enough. And so if we don't look upon ownership as sort of from birth to death of the garment, but that we're sort of, you
yeah.
enjoy it for a while and then it sort of moves on.
I guess it goes back to the kind of like time, like a timeless piece. Like, is it something that lasts in your own wardrobe for 20 years, or is it, as you say, like something you pass on to a friend or,
Yeah.
I don't know, another family member?
When I was talking to Amy Twigger Holroyd recently about her fashion fictions project at Nottingham University,
Mm,
one of the fictions was that garments would then sort of have a little history attached. So they would move around between people and the history would be updated along the way. And I see some brands now take in sort of past product that has been sold and they take it in and they resell it. I think for most of them, I get the impression that that's a sort of sustainability, greenwashing thing. Sort of, oh,
yeah.
we've got a rack here of previously sold stuff. We're really eco conscious. But is that something you've thought about?
Um, I haven't done that. I have had some customers message me if they've like shrunk something, and it's like, what can you do with it to turn it into something else? But it's not something I've done as a kind of, yeah, as a pre, like a, I guess a pre-love thing. Is not something I've
Mm,
offered. I think also I'm a bit terrified of moths. So like,
there are risks here, yes.
so that I feel like when you're there could be risk that something comes back and they don't realize. I don't know. That's yeah. I mean, sometimes I see like the odd piece on Vinted. So yeah, I guess people there are kind of platforms where people can do that. But
Uh,
yeah, I go through like a twice a year. I go through like a bit of a panic of like, let's make sure there's no moss in the studio, in the house. Like
that
yeah.
would be a
So
problem.
yeah, but I do offer a mending service. That's something that we
Mm,
do.
okay.
Um, so yeah, there's someone's got one person from Australia sent me their cardigan and they had this huge hole in the side where they'd leant over a dinner table and a candle had burnt a hole. And it was really sizable. And I was like, I'm just quite interested to see if I can fix this. So I said yes to the challenge. And yeah, I managed to fix it and it's still being worn. So it's yeah.
I was about to say that it was probably a spider that did it, but that's what I mainly connect with Australia. I'm sorry, every Australian listening. And that's why I will never go to Australia. But yeah, I mean, mending, you're not worried about moths coming in through the mending. Do you mend the moth
I
holes?
no. So I say you have to make sure that it's not a moth hole. Like it's
No.
sometimes it might be they caught it in a zip or coffee stains. Sometimes we get and they want like a heart put over it. And so yeah, so I do have rules that it's
Mm,
not moth eaten.
yeah. I find there's one thing about buying secondhand from the UK. The fabric softener a lot of people use with the sort of sticky perfume that's in the fabric softener, which sort of moves around and attaches itself to every other garment the person owns. And it is really hard to get off
Oh,
it,
really? That's
unless you
interesting.
like the sort of fragrant fabric softener smell,
Yeah.
which I don't.
No. There's yeah, I mean I don't really use that fabric softener, but I definitely notice it with knitwear. Like a lot of the kind of wool wash is like
Yeah.
highly perfumed, lots of softener in. So I yeah, I did a collaboration with someone who does like detergents and laundry
Right.
detergents, and they were kind of like the best wool wash that I found that doesn't have that kind of residue because it makes everything like fluffy, yeah,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
kind of yeah, it doesn't, yeah, it's not as natural. So I either use that or I use kind of like hair shampoo, something like that.
For curly hair or straight hair? I
Just a
don't know.
a baby shampoo I find is the best, something very natural. But yeah,
Oh, that's an interesting top tip. Yeah, because I mean, you mentioned that people contact you when they've shrunk their sweater, because I think washing wool garments is something that a lot of people don't really understand.
yeah, yeah. A lot of people will read it that it says hand wash only and use the hand wash setting in the washing machine.
Yeah,
And I don't trust my washing machine. I would never do that because it would ruin it instantly. Whereas some people are kind of a bit more confident with their washing machine, so then they do that. And when people tell me and I look at their jumper and it's perfect, I'm like, that's amazing. I would never try that. I would be too worried watching it go around, worried that it would shrink. But yeah, I think I think it depends on your washing machine. But I loved all the kind of images of people putting out their jumpers in the snow in the winter. I was like, we didn't get any snow, so I couldn't try it out.
I'm a little bit skeptical to that. I mean, we do occasionally haul our sort of wool rugs and stuff out, and
Mm,
but yeah, I mean, I think that the actual washing isn't happening that much. I mean, you cover it with snow, and you get snow into the fibers and all this, and then you shake it off and you take it inside. But I'm not sure what the washing action is.
I
You
feel like
get
you're kind of resetting, like kind of resetting the fibers slightly, kind of giving it a bit of a shock.
yeah.
but, but yeah,
I think I saw it more as a sort of Nordic, a sort of Hygge number two thing. Now let's take all our wool out and pop it in the snow.
yeah.
But I don't know.
I was
Maybe
sent so many videos of that, and I was like, well, the day that it snows, I'll try it out. But we didn't even get a flurry this year, so
I'll
I couldn't try it.
let you know next year. And I think you live
Yeah,
right next to Stansted, so you just hop on and bring your wool over, and
exactly.
we can do it in
Try
my
it.
garden. But I mean, no, but rugs is something we've done since I was a kid. You take them out, but I think you
Mm.
mainly get all the dust out.
Yeah, yeah, because yeah, you go out and beat it.
But I mean, it's great visuals for Instagram, isn't it? So yeah, sure. I don't have any sort of qualms about putting my wool in our washing machine. That works just fine. But I think a lot of people will just put their wool jumper in together with everything else they're washing, put it on 60 degrees because that get it nice and clean, use the regular detergent, and then have a massive surprise.
Yeah, yeah, it's when I get caught up with the other washing. But yeah, a
So,
very sad day.
yeah. But I mean, when people have done that and they contact you, there's nothing to be done, really, is there?
No, there's not much I can do with it. Definitely. Or if they've kind of shrunk it slightly, I can give them kind of tips on how to kind of like stretch it out. But it kind of depends how badly it's been shrunk. But
I had this I still have a very nice mulberry sweater made in Britain, lovely wool and all that. I don't know what I was thinking the day I put that in the washing machine, but it is kind of the size of for a 2 year old now. And I did for fun put it out for sale, and someone did contact me and ask me
oh, really?
if a 2 year old could wear it, but it's like a piece of armor because it's so
Yeah.
felted. So
Oh,
I thought I'd make something, so just finish it off so that you can sit on it in the cold while you're sitting outside washing your sweaters in the
in the
snow.
snow.
So you said a summer collection. What's it like
Mm.
selling knitwear in the summer? Are you hoping for a really bad British summer?
A true British summer. Well, it's more. I think it definitely in the UK. It's definitely like in the evenings it does get cold, so you do have kind of like your cardigans and stuff like that. But I've got it on today actually. It's I've knitted a beautiful a lamb's wool silk blend yarn in the kind of lace detail. So it's kind of, it's not, you wouldn't wear it in the heat of summer, but it's something that you kind of have that kind of layer in the evenings, or you can layer it over a t-shirt. So it's definitely not what you would wear in Greece in the summer, but it is
Mm.
something you wear in the British summer, definitely.
Lamb's wool and silk. That sounds like quite a posh fibre mix.
It's lovely. It's really lightweight. It's got this beautiful drape to it, and it is very very fine. But yeah, it's a new yarn that a mill in Yorkshire has just developed. So yeah, it's really lovely.
I think many will think of you as primarily a woman's wear designer, but I think you do menswear as well.
Yes, yeah. So menswear as well. It's not as big as my women's wear collection, but the accessories is quite a 50-50 split with the socks and accessories.
So what sort of knitwear do men go for?
Um, my best sellers have been a Lanswool cashmere with beautiful kind of tweeds in. Um, it kind of changes from year to year. It's quite um, sometimes it's kind of more kind of, I guess, more kind of not workweary, but kind of workwear with a twist, as one of my friends said.
Cashmere workwear. Oh.
Something that you can wear to work, but it has that kind of like interest. And sometimes it's like the geometrics, like the intarsia geometrics have always been really popular with men as well. So it kind of changes, and I don't know. It's always kind of been a bit of a smaller collection because I've always had to make such high minimums. But now, this autumn, I'm offering kind of a larger menswear collection, but it's being going to be made for pre-order. But it takes 7 to 10 days to make, so it's you know it's not a long time to wait for something. But it's nice to be able to offer more to the
Yeah. That's
menswear
that's
customers.
an interesting point. 7 to 10 days. Is that a long time to wait? Because I know things that take much longer than that,
Yeah,
and things that take much shorter. But we do live in a society where people want things now.
yeah. I don't think that's a long time to wait at all. But I know when it gets to Christmas and people, or it's a
Uh,
birthday and they've left it too late, then that is too
yeah,
long. So yeah, that's where the kind of like having a size set always in stock will be helpful because there's always that kind of last minute
yeah.
panic gift.
That's 'cause I was looking at a pair of shoes recently, and I was thinking was it 3 months to have them made, and I was 3 months. I mean, by that time it'll be sort of summer's almost over, and oh,
Yeah,
that's way too long. But
yeah,
then, if I'm shopping for furniture, I'm always disappointed when I can't walk out with the
yeah,
furniture, and
exactly.
I mean they never have it in stock. So yeah,
Yeah, I think I've over the last year I've kind of been kind of trying out the pre-order, and sometimes I'm really surprised at how long people will pre-order in advance, and other
yeah.
times they'll just wait until it's there. So I don't know. I think it just depends
I
on
wonder,
the person, on the
I wonder if
situation.
yeah, I wonder if people are a bit different there. That if you do realise that good things are worth waiting for, or if you're just you just desperate for something new and it has to happen now. Or I remember when I was talking to Adele from Trickers, who makes the bespoke shoes for them,
Mm.
and was it 3 months it took to get a pair? But she had customers who then always had 3 or 4 pairs in order,
Oh wow.
so that every time they got a pair done, they'd place a new order. And
Yeah,
I mean, she's full up for the foreseeable, just with the
that's
regular
incredible.
people.
Yeah,
So maybe that's where you need to go with sweaters, so that 7 to 10 days turnaround is too short then for that.
yeah, yeah. No, yeah. It's I mean, sometimes I feel like with some styles it will be longer depending if I like when it's especially when it's our custom twisted colours that might extend it a bit, but because we'll be doing all the washing here as well, so that helps keep it quite a shorter lead time.
because you do have to wash them after you've knit them, don't you?
Yeah, and that's a whole other craft skill in itself. It really is.
My wife is a knitter,
Um,
so I'm acquainted with the process, but please tell a bit about it.
so it has to have the kind of the water that it has to kind of basically sit in water, instead of being kind of like washed and spun. So a lot some people some even some actually quite big factories, they might kind of get a domestic washing machine and tweak it,
Mhm.
and kind of get very technical. So they get a certain amount of spin and a certain amount of water. But when I kind of tried that, I realised that I was going to felt too much of my knitwear very quickly, and I just couldn't bear the thought of washing something or knitting something, it taking hours and hours, and then felting it right at the end. I've just kind of invested in a washing facility, which is quite high tech, but
Mhm.
but I would be safe in the knowledge that kind of like basically every well-known yarn, like high quality yarn, has been tested, and there's a kind of perfect kind of formula already kind of
Mm.
technically set up. So that's being set up in the next month, which will be brilliant.
Why is
'Cause,
it they need to be washed after they're been knit?
so lots of yarns have a kind of like a kind of, it's called greasy, like an oil that goes through it,
Okay,
or the kind of lanolin added to it, so it goes through the knitting machine, the fibers don't break.
right.
Whereas like hand knitting yarn wouldn't really particularly have that. You could knit it and kind of wear it straight away.
Because I often think when I see my wife's jumpers that once she's just finished them, they just look all wonky. But then they
Yeah,
have a wash and they're sort of pinned out and dried, and then they sort of look perfect. I was just
yeah,
wondering if
yeah.
it's
So
the
you
sort of
block it, and
tensions and or whatever, but it's quite clear that it does require it. Otherwise, it looks
yeah.
terrible.
No, it definitely is part of it. Does kind of, yeah. Again, it finishes and makes the garment, like the blocking of it, to get that kind of, yeah, the way it sits after it's steamed and set into place.
So a lot of these things that we mere mortals know little about, which I guess is
Yeah.
why you're the knitwear professional. There we go. Is there anything we should have mentioned that we haven't mentioned? Anything
Um,
you'd like to talk about?
no, I think it's yeah. I think it's been really enjoyed sharing what I've been up to since we last
If
spoke.
people want to come and see you and the Globe guy, where
Yeah.
where do they find the info?
So it's all on my website at genevievesweeney.com. So yeah, you can have a kind of appointment. So you can pop in anytime, or we've got the kind of the big tours as well.
Hmm. And then you can both see the processes and
Yeah, so you
buy
see,
them.
yeah, behind the scenes, you can, yeah, try on the knitwear. You can see how we make it, all the machines in action. It's yeah, kind of
Hmm,
see the kind of little GS world that we're making.
brilliant. And anything sort of future orientated you'd like to mention?
Um, at the moment, we're just we're fully into kind of like autumn preparations, and kind of building our team. So we're kind of getting all the skills that we need at the moment. So that feels where my head is at the moment. Just kind of getting ready for autumn, which seems crazy when like summer hasn't even, like spring has just started. But but yeah, I think you always find yourself kind of like 6 months mentally 6 months ahead.
Is that something that smaller companies, they're 6 months ahead, but the larger companies are sort of a year ahead?
Yeah, a year ahead, 2 years ahead. But yeah, I
Um,
yeah, I was I can't work that far in the future. I'm definitely like a couple of seasons ahead.
Seems very abstract. It certainly does. Okay, Genevieve, thank you so much for talking to me today. And
Thank you for having me.
bye bye for now.
Thank
So,
you.